wanted to share with you guys a bunch of different wellness tips that have actually worked for me and changed my life in a positive way. I think that oftentimes when we are watching social media, we see all these people sharing these things and we immediately think that they apply to us and they're going to be like this, cure-all thing. And then we get super regimented about them and feel like we have to implement all of these things into our life perfectly in order to have wellness in our lives. And the reality is that wellness is truly meant to enhance your life. It's not supposed to be your life. And so it's not about being perfect. It's not about doing these things every single day, 100% of the time, because sometimes you're traveling, sometimes you're busy. But on the days that you can incorporate these things, I want you to take a second and notice, does this actually enhance my life? Does this actually make me feel better? Does this actually make me feel good? I'm kind of going to do them in order of, as I move through the day, what things I'm doing, and take what you want, leave what you don't, but I'm going to give you a little explanation as to why these things work. So the first tip that I will give you is hydrate, hydrate, hydrate first thing in the morning. So what that means for me in terms of hydrating in the morning, that means hydrating before caffeine, even hydrating before I have my breakfast within an hour of waking, giving myself water to kickstart that digestion is so important. I think oftentimes I hear so many clients and even friends of mine who will have coffee first thing on an empty stomach after a night where you've just gone at least probably 8 hours, if not more, without hydrating your system. Sleep really dehydrates you. You're not getting any sort of hydration to your GI or to your cells for an entire night. Your skin, your hair, your nails, your digestive system, all those things need water. And so hydrating your body with at least 12 ounces of water. I like to do it with some lemon, some ginger, some turmeric. You don't have to get that crazy with it, but I will drink at least 12 ounces of water with those things in them as a boost. A lot of people like to do that, like warm water with lemon. The lemon is a nice added boost, and I always have that in my water every morning because it helps to detoxify the system, it helps to boost the immune system, and it helps with digestion because of that detoxification component. And so a little warm water with lemon in the morning before you're having your morning coffee is really important. So that's tip number one. The next thing is eating a balanced breakfast within 1 hour of waking. This is so important because there are so many people out there who think like fasting is the way to go. I want to do this like whole intermittent fasting thing and that's going to save me calories. When the reality is that one, eating that big meal later in the day is horrible for your digestion. It's going to throw off your digestion in terms of creating a balance of bad bacteria to good bacteria. It's going to cause more bloating because there's a buildup of air and gas in your system. It's really not great for your digestion. It's also not great for your metabolism. Your body thrives on routine. It thrives on predictability. It thrives on getting the fuel that it needs to be stable first thing in the morning. And when you're running on fumes, you're running on adrenaline, that's not good for your hormones, and it can actually have the reverse result that you want, where you end up gaining weight rather than losing weight. When you are eating a balanced breakfast with protein, fat, and fiber first thing in the morning, you are going to naturally have less cravings for sugar throughout the day. You're going to naturally have more energy throughout the day, and you're going to have an easier time losing weight in the long run because your blood sugar is more stable. And so it's really important for you to be getting at least 20 grams of protein, at least 10 grams of fiber, and 5 to 10 grams of fat first thing in the morning when you wake up. We really want you to be focusing on stabilizing your blood sugar first thing in the morning so you have the fuel that you need. And this is not just me trying to give you my wisdom. This is research backed. There's so much research to support what I'm saying with eating within an hour of waking. So that's number 2. Tip number 3 is avoid having caffeine or coffee on an empty stomach. So this kind of goes along with tip number 1. When you are having, especially coffee on an empty stomach, because of how acidic it is, it can cause things like indigestion, acid reflux, poor digestion and bloating, things that you don't want to be dealing with throughout the day. And so if you're somebody who already is struggling with digestive issues, I know I personally did for years, and I would wake up and have a venti coffee on an empty stomach and wonder why my digestive issues were so bad. Like, the moment that I started to change that habit, and again, now I'm only matcha, but I would do coffee back then and do it with my breakfast, with food, with fuel. It started to totally transform my digestion, among a host of other things that I did at the time, but this was a really big takeaway. The other thing is that when you have that coffee on an empty stomach first thing in the morning, what you're doing is you're raising your cortisol even more than it already is. So your cortisol is highest first thing in the morning, as it should be, right? And if you're somebody who's chronically overwhelmed, chronically anxious, chronically stressed, your cortisol is probably unnecessarily high. Then adding coffee on an empty stomach with no breakfast on top of that, you're really sending it through the roof. And so if you're somebody who feels anxious, you feel like you have digestive issues, you feel like you can't sleep at night, you feel really overwhelmed all the time, this coffee on an empty stomach is making the whole HPA axis dysfunction 10 times worse. And so if you can have your coffee with breakfast so that you're eating it with more stable, or you're drinking it, I should say, with more stable blood sugar, it's going to be way better for your nervous system at the end of the day. The next tip that I will give you is move your body. And in order to be able to do that, for so many of us who live in this hustle culture where life is nonstop, or at least it feels like it sometimes, especially when you're working and have kids, schedule in your workouts. It's that simple. Treat your workouts like you would treat a meeting with yourself. If I'm meeting with my team or a client, I'm not scrolling on my phone or 10 minutes late or figuring out excuses why I can't be there. If I'm meeting with somebody else, I'm there, I'm present, and I have intention to learn, grow, and do something with the time I'm spending with that person. Your time is just as valuable as other people's. And so if you take a little time on your Sunday to schedule in 4 to 6 workouts for the week and say, okay, this is what I'm doing Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, you know, hey, this is what my schedule is. This is what I can accommodate. This is what I have time for. Some days it's going to be 20 minutes. Some days it's going to be 45 minutes. Some days it might be 10 minutes, but put in the time on your calendar and don't miss that meeting with yourself. You are worth it, 100%. The next tip that I have for you is to schedule breaks in throughout your day. This is so important. So when we think about the fact that so many of us work on our screens, we work from our devices, our computers, our laptops, our iPads. I was reading a statistic that said that we spend about 20 years of our life in front of a screen. And when we think about the amount of anxiety that induces, the amount of overwhelm that induces, we all need breaks. We all need to be supported by being in nature, connecting with other humans, having time alone where we're not just sitting in front of a computer screen being drained by that energy. And there are plenty of productive, amazing things that we get done on a screen, but I really think that in terms of our mental health and our physical health too, to be able to get up and walk around and get the circulation flowing, it's so important to take those little breaks throughout the day where you're not back to back, because that's so often what I see with so many clients is like, I've scheduled things from the moment I wake up to the moment I go to bed and I have no breaks. And then we wonder why our nervous systems are completely out of whack, causing that cascade of other hormones to be imbalanced. It's because we're not giving ourselves adequate time to come back to that parasympathetic nervous system. So schedule in 10-minute breaks between every appointment you have so that you have the time to be able to just take space for yourself and get grounded again. And that brings me to my next tip, which is it's so important to practice mindful eating. When we think about mindful eating, most of the people who I work with who come to me with either, again, burnout, overwhelm, digestive issues, feeling like they're chronically bloated, are also eating in front of screens. They're never taking a second to give themselves the capacity to come back into that parasympathetic nervous system, which is called your rest and digest state. It's called that for a reason. We need to be in a calm, grounded state in order to be able to properly digest our food, to be able to absorb nutrients, and for our metabolisms to function optimally. So if you think that you can sit there and be on your laptop answering emails and also scrolling social media and then shoveling bites of food in your mouth, that's not what your body was designed to do. You are going to, again, this is supported by research, this is not just my opinion, you are going to end up overeating because you are not being in a place where you are capable physically, biologically, to listen to your body's hunger and fullness cues. So you'll end up overeating. You'll end up eating too fast because you are trying to do a million things at once, which is a big part of what causes that bloating. And so think about chewing your food 25 times. How does your food taste? How does it feel in your mouth? How is your food making you feel? How do you feel in this moment? Do you feel calm? Do you feel nervous? Do you feel excited? Do you feel anxious, overwhelmed? Think about how your body is feeling and try to give your body the space to come back to that place of calm while you have your meals. Again, it's coming from a place of self-respect, and coming from somebody who used to literally eat all of her meals in front of a screen. I never didn't have my phone in front of my face. I know how hard of a habit it is to break, but you and your body deserve nourishment and respect and the capacity to really digest and enjoy your food. And so if you want to get away from some of those symptoms, one of the biggest things that I've seen help myself and my clients in terms of bloating is to slow down, to listen to your body's cues, to stop when you're full, to eat when you're hungry, to not skip meals, and to really practice that whole philosophy around mindful eating. One of the things that I skipped over tip-wise in terms of my day-to-day routine that is probably the most important piece of my day is finding some quiet time for self-reflection. This looks different for me every single day. It could be that one day I'm journaling and then I do a 5-minute meditation, or one day I do some breath work and then I read a few pages in my book. Whatever it is for you, find a self-reflection practice that brings you back to yourself. There is so much research and data to support the fact that some sort of stillness, self-reflection, breath work, meditation, whatever you want to call it, whatever works for you, is so important in bringing down cortisol levels, lowering blood pressure, getting you into a state where you can also feel mentally really grateful for your life, have more positive thoughts, have a more positive attitude towards your day. So if you're somebody, again, this is the mindset that I really came from, who finds yourself often complaining or thinking like, this is this person's fault, this is that person's fault, why is life happening to me rather than how is this happening for me? Meditation can be so great for you because it can help you to shift your perspective and see things from an outside view rather than being so focused on the negative, which I think our culture really ingrains in us these days. And so sitting with yourself doesn't have to be this thing that we take so seriously. In fact, it's a way for you to look at your thoughts. You're not supposed to have thoughts. I think that that's where a lot of people go wrong. It's like, oh, I'm just supposed to sit here and I'm not supposed to think anything. Like, no, you're actually supposed to sit there and see what your brain is saying. See what your brain is telling you. Watch those thoughts pass you by like clouds in the sky. And when you see those thoughts, then becoming aware of them, you can say, do I want to shift this? Do I want to change this? Is there another way that I can see this? What can I be grateful for in this situation or this moment, rather than looking at it the way that my limiting beliefs are telling me to look at it? And that's why it's such a helpful practice, because it's not just about physical, lowering your blood pressure, lowering your cortisol, things I mentioned at the beginning. It's also about changing the way that you see the world, changing the way that you see your circumstances, changing the way that you go about life, which is really, really powerful. So the next tip that I will give you is really think about the alcohol you're consuming. This is something that comes up in a lot of conversations that I have with clients. And most often, and I'm not saying all the time, but most often people are using alcohol as a coping mechanism for some sort of stress that they are dealing with, or perceived anxiety about a social situation. So for example, like having 2 glasses of wine at night after I put the kids down because I'm so stressed out, I'm so overwhelmed, I had the longest day, and this is going to make me feel better. So it's not that you're drinking the wine because you just are really enjoying it and it feels like a great, little treat for yourself to have. It's a coping mechanism to deal with the stress. So rather than the wine, could you deal with the stress? Could you meditate more? Could you be less reactive with your kids? Could you take things off your plate so you're not so overwhelmed and stressed out during the day? So you don't need the wine as a coping mechanism. Or if you think about the social situation example, like I'm going to this big event, I know I'm going to see people who I haven't seen in a while. I want to feel a little loose so that I'm not so uncomfortable talking. Okay, why am I so uncomfortable in that social situation? Why am I not more confident in myself and my abilities, in who I am to have good, meaningful conversation, right? And so the reason I say all of this is because there has been this huge meta data analysis. So again, not just a small little research study, but a huge meta analysis that recently came out that says that no amount of alcohol is good for you. Not 1 glass a week, not 1 glass of red wine a night, no amount of alcohol is good for you. It increases your risk for hormonal imbalances, estrogen dominance, a variety of different types of cancers, including things like breast cancer, cardiovascular disease, liver issues, the list goes on and on. And when we also think about like vanity, because I'm a vain person, I care about my looks, it's going to increase your likelihood for wrinkles and aging. You're going to age faster the more that you drink, and your skin is going to be more dehydrated. It is not great for your hair or your nails either. It's going to cause brittle, weak hair and nails. It is going to cause weight gain because of the calorie dense beverages that are alcohol, the high sugar content that is in most alcohol. And then when you're drinking, you also tend to make poorer choices with food. And so it's this kind of vicious cycle, and one that I was in for a number of years. I actually was a binge drinker in college where I would go out, black out. And then, in my 20s, I would drink every night when I came home from work as a coping mechanism. And so if you're somebody who drinks, it's just something that you want to be mindful of. It's something you want to look at. It's something you want to ask yourself, do I have a healthy relationship with this? Could I be drinking less? Would it be better for my health if I was drinking less? At a maximum, my recommendation is 2 drinks a week. If you really want it, if it's really a part of your social fabric and you really enjoy the habit of it. There are so many alternatives out there these days in terms of things that we can do. Even drinking a little bit of sparkling water with, a splash of grapefruit in a wine glass, like to make it feel special, but you don't have to be drinking the actual alcohol because it's not good for your health, period. The next thing I will say that is so important in terms of a tip is focus on your social connections. This has been something that has been seen in study after study, research after research, data after data, where the more, and I'm not talking about social media, I'm talking about real, in-person, live connections where you are with another human being. This has been shown to increase our lifespan. When we feel like we are a part of a community, when we feel like we have other people who have our backs, who are there to care for us just as we are there to care for them. We have meaning and purpose in their lives just as they have meaning and purpose in ours. This is so vital for you to live a long and healthy life. The more and more we pull away from that and we hide behind these screens and computers, we think that we're making real authentic connection, and we're not. That's the truth. There's so much data behind this now to show that those connections that we have online, they really are not fulfilling. They're not meaningful. And by all means, am I so grateful for the communities that I've created online and the people who I've made connections with? Absolutely. But the connections that you have with real humans in your life are much more important. So value those, honor those, respect those, make time for those. Put your phone down when you're with those people and make sure that they know how important they are in your life. And the last tip that I will give you guys for today in terms of health and wellness and things that have really changed my life is focus on your sleep hygiene. Now, so many people think this is not a big deal. I actually saw a statistic in a book I was reading last week that said that sleep in our country over the last 100 years has declined by 25% because we don't value it. We don't think it's important. All we care about as Americans is how productive can I be? How much can I hustle? How much can I get done in a day? If that means I have to go to bed an hour later and wake up an hour earlier, okay. But then we wonder why we're all so burnt out and we feel like crap and garbage all the time. It is not helpful for you to be running on empty, trying to get your to-do list done. You want to feel good and energized and like you actually have the capacity to do the things on your list for the people that you're serving rather than running on complete and total burnout. So really, you want to focus on that sleep hygiene. And what that looks like is starting by putting your phone away 2 hours before you go to bed. We really don't want that blue light in our face disrupting our melatonin production before we are about to go to sleep. And the closer you have a screen, whether it's your phone or the TV or your iPad in your face around bedtime, the harder it is for your brain to produce melatonin to, one, send you off into a deep sleep, and two, to keep you in that deep sleep. And so if you're somebody who wakes up multiple times or you have a hard time falling asleep, you really don't want to have that screen in your face. And if 2 hours sounds like it's too much for you, start with 10 or 15 minutes and work your way back. If you're falling asleep with your phone in your hand, you really want to work your way back from that. You could do another meditation or a breath work exercise where you just calm your body down from the day. You unwind, you take an Epsom salt bath, you listen to some peaceful music, you read on a Kindle or a book. Who would have thought? Like a real book. You just don't want the blue light in your face, which Kindles don't have. So thinking about things, activities, maybe you talk to your partner over a cup of tea, something to unwind you, to take the tension away and to tell your body, hey, it's time for sleep. Just like your morning routine sets you up for the day to tell your body, hey, we're going to work out, we're going to take our supplements, we're going to do this. Your evening routine should tell your body, hey, it's time to wind down. It's time to slow down. And what I will leave you guys with all of this, it's almost another tip, but it is the idea that you have to find what works for you, which is kind of how I started this video. Don't let someone on social media or some nutritionist or some trainer tell you this is the supplements that you need to take, this is the workout that you need to do. Check in with yourself too. Does that feel good for your body? Does that feel right for you? Just because somebody on Instagram is taking a probiotic may not be right for you. Have you done the proper testing? Have you looked inward? Have you checked in with your own body to know, like, hey, I don't have dysbiosis or small intestinal bacterial overgrowth, and this probiotic actually might be making my situation worse. I think we're so quick to just jump on the train of like, oh, this person's doing this, so I'm going to do that, and that's what's going to work for me. And that is not the reality. There's no one size fits all out there. You have to really figure out your wellness rituals for yourself, often through trial and error and often through testing. So there's really two ways to go about it, but it's about building that trust and connection with knowing what your body needs versus just thinking that something that works for somebody else is going to be what works for you. So I am offering these tips to you to try them, test them out, see how they feel in your life, and take them on if they feel good. If they don't, leave it. That's totally fine too. What I share with you guys is driven by research, data, and science, and then applied in my own life to make sure that it worked for me. And so I hope that these things are helpful. I hope that they feel helpful to you, and I hope that you feel well doing them. Thank you so much for watching today. And if you like this video, and subscribe to our channel, and we will see you next week.